Well, let's get started. Welcome everyone to the Wyoming Rising Podcast. Another episode. We're excited that you're joining us. This is where we talk to Wyoming leaders, athletes, and connect communities. Today's guest we're excited to talk to is Matt Stock. Matt is somebody who went to Cheyenne Central High School many, many years ago. Graduated class of 91. We'll talk a little bit about that. After that, he played college basketball at the Division I level, coached at the Division I level for a lot of years, and now he's with UC Santa Barbara in their foundation program. Was that right, Matt?
Yep.
Yeah.
Director of development.
He's also my third favorite brother-in-law.
Out of three, right?
Third out of three. I love Matt. He's a really good dude. And Nathaniel doesn't know him, so Nathaniel will get to meet Matt and hear some of his stories. So with that, Matt, why don't you just introduce yourself a little bit? I gave just kind of a quick intro.
Yeah.
Actually, you know what? We won't. You don't need to intro. Let's just start. When did you start playing basketball? What are your first memories of playing basketball?
Good question. It was at a YMCA somewhere in Cheyenne where my dad was the coach. And I remember how slippery the court was and how actually I made a layup and ended up outside because the door was like right next to it. So I was outside, got my shoes nice and muddy, and came running right back in on the court. So yeah, that's how it all started.
Yeah. Yeah. YMCA. What were you? Probably 7, 8 years old?
Yeah, I think I was 6, 7, or 8, trying to, because as far as I can remember, as early as I can remember, I was doing something with the ball. And that was, I think, maybe the first organized game I had was in that YMCA
Yeah.
somewhere.
Did you guys have, so this was late 80s, early 90s, did you guys have like club basketball teams? Did you have travel teams, or was it just like,
No,
yeah,
it was all, recreation through the city and just seasonal. So you did nothing year round. It's whatever, basketball season, you go play that, football, you go play soccer, whatever. So there was no, skill development stuff, no practices outside of the team you were on that year, whatever. So that's how it's come a long way for sure.
yeah. Well, but nevertheless, the class of 91, Cheyenne Central basketball ended up with a pretty legit squad. When did you know? When did you know that? Oh man, I got some. Well, yeah. Actually, let's talk about that group first, and then I'll ask that question. So that group, class 91, undefeated season, sent 3 dudes to Division I basketball programs. Demetrius Drew, New Mexico. He was a high level. Probably in today's world, he'd be a 4-star guy, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was
Yeah,
legit.
he definitely had the talent and the athletic ability of those 4-star guys.
Yeah. Jeremy Fox, 6'10", really athletic, big, went to Alaska, right?
Yep.
And then you went after your mission, went to Fresno, and then ended up at UCSB. That I don't remember a time that a Wyoming high school sent 3 guys to Division I programs. Can Nate,
I don't remember.
Matt?
Yeah. And you could include Andre McQuell, who played college football. So you had athletes, college athletes running up and down that court, which, yeah, I don't remember more than 1 or 2 on a team, in recent history for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
We, I guess as far as I can remember, we weren't the same class, but Central sent me and Lawson to Division I right away, and then Cade Burns went to,
There you go.
I think a D3 in Iowa, I think.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, yeah, there were 2 other kids on there that could have played Division I football.
Yeah.
But they chose not to.
Storyboys
But
could
yeah,
have
no,
been.
the 2021 class was full of athletes.
Yeah.
Full of athletes.
Yeah. So Nathaniel's making a case for 2021 class could beat the class of 91.
There you go. Sounds like there was a talent there.
No, there was. That was a really good class. And also Lawson he went to CU, played a couple years there, then ended up at Utah.
Yeah.
He just got off a 10-year contract with, was it Memphis, the Grizzlies?
10-day, yeah. 10-day contract.
10-day contract. So that was a really good group. They won a state championship. Nate, did you guys go undefeated?
No, we went 21-3. We lost to all the North schools. We lost in Sheridan, which I'm sure you know, going to
Yeah.
Sheridan, you're destined to
Well,
lose. You're
yeah.
not. You everyone's against you, even the refs there.
Yeah, I was gonna say the refs, I think, is the principal and the assistant principal, right?
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
has to
Yeah,
be,
some
or
kid's
the
dad.
coach's brother, something like that.
So Matt, going back to that group, when did you know, hey, we're pretty good?
I would say in junior high because we were all together from junior high, and so we didn't lose in junior high, and then, so we were excited about high school, and then we had success early on in high school, so we thought, again, this is a long time ago, so my memory, I only remember the good stuff, right? And it's before the digital age, so you can't verify any of this stuff by video. So I'm just gonna say it, Sam. You played against me, you know it, so you can either fact check me if you want. But yeah, we knew, and the thing that we knew early is just how athletic we were. We were getting layups, and when they were a little older, we were getting dunks, so when that happened, you kind of knew you had some talent and could do some things.
So, when you were I'm assuming you went to McCormick, right?
Yeah.
Did you guys have to, like, was there anyone on your team who split off and went to East? Because like, nowadays, there may be a team at McCormick, and 3 of those guys may be going to East, or there might be 5 guys on Cary are going to Central. So,
Yeah.
did you guys have to worry about that, I guess, during your time there?
I think a couple kids might have saw that they weren't gonna get a lot of playing time that were good players. But so that was definitely something every year, like, do we have our core back? But that core 4 or 5 of us were pretty close, and so we knew we were coming. It was just, what else was happening around us type thing. But it was definitely out there because, you could go really wherever, right? You just had to get your own ride, if I remember right. You could just get a quick transfer. So back then it was pretty easy to go to whatever school you wanted to.
And there was no South, it was just East and Central.
Yeah, just East and Central.
I
Yeah, with the Air
remember
Force Base, we were always wondering if we get new move-ins. That happened quite a bit back then. Demetrius Drew and Andre McCall were both, on the Air Force Base. So we were hoping they didn't get transferred, and always wondering if we get new guys moving in.
I remember watching. I was a sophomore when you were a senior. I never played against you except for in pickup, and I cooked you in pickup. So I mean,
Yeah,
you know.
that's what I remember too.
But yeah, I remember watching that team, and you guys had a set play off the tip off
The
where
thing Sam's
Jeremy
having
would
some
tip
technical
it, you'd probably
Yeah,
difficulties.
Sam's
you,
frozen.
So,
and you'd throw an oop or a pass
kinda like going with
to
that, did you ever
Demetrius, and
coach
you'd get a
during the
dunk off the
transfer
tip.
portal at,
Most games,
I
is
guess,
that
was the
right?
transfer portal a thing when you were a coach at UCSB?
No, I got out of
No?
coaching before that started. So it was 9 years ago. Is that Sam again? Yeah.
He's trying to come back.
Yeah, no
No,
worries.
that
That's a
have
good
you, I
question.
guess, experienced
Sorry,
that
guys,
at
I got
UCSB?
a little frozen there. Did Matt answer the question about the dunk off the tip?
No, we
About the
didn't even
what?
hear that.
So you didn't get my question?
No.
Okay, here's my question. Sorry, and this I got to figure. I'm gonna have to wire into my router or something so I don't lose my internet. But so here's my question, Matt. This is an important question.
Okay.
I remember watching you guys. You had a set play off the tip where Jeremy Fox would tip it to you probably, and then you'd throw an oop to Demetrius, and you
Yeah.
get a dunk off the or just a pass up the court, get a dunk. I don't know if you set a screen or something. Was that like how you guys just made a statement at the beginning of the game? You just get a dunk right off
Yeah.
the tip.
Yeah, that's crazy you bring that up because especially preseason, right? When teams didn't know us and didn't have a scouting report, we got this tip play every time. And Jeremy, who rarely missed or, lost a tip, would tip it to me. I'd take one dribble and just throw it up. And then Demetrius was on a full sprint. I bet we got that 5 or 6 times our senior year in the preseason. And then we pressed the whole game. Oh, that you could sit up your press right off a dunk, and a lot of times it was 10-0. Now, again, this is my memory, right? If you fact check this, I'm sure it's not true, but it felt like we were up 8-10-0 before some teams knew it hit them, just because we were full court press the entire game and start with a dunk. So that was fun.
Yeah, I remember a couple games watching that team play, one at Story and one in Laramie. Laramie had a pretty good team that year too.
They
I
did.
think that was one of
Yeah.
the closer games you guys played. Anyway, well,
Yep.
Yeah, arguably the best team ever, and what Nate's class of 21 may have a case. I'm sure people will say, "Well, I remember the class of 1968 that had a 7-footer," and but really great team. So Matt, when did you? So you're playing at Cheyenne Central. When did you know? Okay, I want to go play college basketball, and what did that process look like for you?
I would say probably after my junior year when I was getting recruited a little bit for both basketball and soccer. I'm like, okay, maybe I can, get a scholarship and get a free education. That's kind of when it started to. I always wanted to, but I didn't know if it was a reality or not. But after junior year, I think that's kind of when I was like, all right, let's lock in here, see what we can do, and see if we can go to college playing some type of sport.
And so, I mean, were you reaching out to schools? Were they reaching out to you? What that looked like? I know you
No, not
started
at
at
that
Rick's,
time.
right?
Yeah. So I went to junior college, which is Rick's College, which is now BYU Idaho. And that was my main recruitment for basketball was all the junior colleges around the area for sure. And that's kind of when and some soccer schools back then, but the soccer wasn't near as big in the 90s. Um, so yeah, so it was just mainly they would see, around it started in Wyoming, but then a lot of the Midwest junior colleges, Colorado and Nebraska, they were reaching out as well
For soccer?
for both soccer and for basketball, mainly basketball. And I have a few like football schools too, right? Air Force at that point reached out for football, but I knew I wasn't good enough for football just because I was too slow and small. But that's when that all started to happen. Then I'm like, okay, maybe there's a chance here.
So you ended up going to Rick's and now BYU Idaho, playing there for a year, um, and then you left to go serve a mission. Is that right?
Yep. Yep. I left after my freshman year of college to go on my mission to Anaheim, Disneyland, California.
That's pretty nice. It's better than Sao Paulo, Brazil, I think. At least
It is.
at least the
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Brazil, it was a lot closer, but I'll tell you, coming from Wyoming, Santa Ana, California was my first area. That was definitely like a foreign place to me, coming from the Midwest to California. So, but it was a good experience.
did you play that first year at Rick's? Did you redshirt?
Yeah. I played, and that conference at the time was a really, really good conference. You had College of Southern Idaho, Utah Valley at that time was a junior college. So every game we played, there was usually one or two Division I players on those teams. So it was good quality competition, and that's what ultimately helped me get a scholarship to Fresno State was the film from my junior college days that we sent to colleges, that my dad sent to colleges. So it definitely was a good decision.
So you played in this so what region was that? Because I don't know what region they are, but CSI, I'm assuming North Idaho was in there, in Coeur
They were
d'Alene.
yeah.
Is
Yeah, what
Did
was that
CSI run the
region?
show?
Huh?
Did CSI run the show in that conference? Because they do now. They, like,
They
win it
did
every
their
year.
thing. They were the standard. They had guys that were and most of them were all high level players, but just didn't have grades. So they would go there, get their grades up, and they were Division I schools out of high school. But where some other junior colleges were really good players, but maybe weren't quite, good enough to be Division I. So they wanted to go there, refine their game a little bit, and then get recruited. But CSI definitely, you beat them, and you knew you had a chance in the overall. You were going to be good
Yeah.
nationwide.
Yeah, unfortunately, we never beat them. We had a
Yeah,
close game up until about 6 minutes, but gosh, when you play them at home, they just kinda suck the life out of you at the end.
don't they? And
Yeah,
the fans are right on top of you. Yeah,
yeah.
it's a great
No,
atmosphere.
that's a nice gym. I don't know what it was like back then, but it's a pretty nice
It was
gym
nice
now.
back then. Yeah,
So Matt, did you play any basketball during your 2 years in Anaheim, Disneyland, California?
a little bit, a little
Yeah.
bit. I actually had a couple colleges come out and put me through a workout while I
Really?
was on a mission. I think Montana State was one of them. And I remember thinking I had a good workout, but then looking back at it, I'd been on a mission a year and a half, right? So I'd played at the most an hour of basketball every day. and I'm playing against other missionaries, I can't imagine what the coaches, doing the same thing for a living. They probably walked out of that steak center on a Monday morning going, "What did I just see?" I'm not
So wait,
recruiting
you
this
did a
kid.
workout at the church? All these
Yes.
Mormon churches have gyms, and so they said, "Meet us at the gym, and we'll at Montana State, we'll run you
Yeah.
through a workout."
And I think I was in Anaheim at the time. So I'm in the Anaheim Steak Center, with other missionaries feeding, rebounding, helping me out. Just kidding.
I would
I'm
pay
sure
I
the
would pay
coach.
thousands of dollars to see a video of that workout.
Well, they didn't recruit me after that, so I guess that tells
Yeah,
you how that went.
they weren't impressed. So Matt, the story is in the family that you got back and you were from the mission after 2 years and you were about 25 pounds overweight and couldn't really talk to you. You were kinda lost. Is that so how did you get back into basketball shape after 2 years of not really doing it?
Yeah. So I do remember having chipmunk cheeks and being definitely not very good cardio wise, but you know, it took me, I would say, till I felt like I was in back to the shape I was in before my mission, probably till December of my first year at Fresno State, because I went to Fresno State right out of, off my mission. Um, the cardio came back quick. The shooting came back pretty quick. It was the ball handling. It was the defense. It was the change of, direction and pace that took a while. But as soon as I got home, I was on a strength and conditioning program from Fresno State. I was on it the day I got off my mission, eating better. On a Mormon mission, you're eating 3 or 4 times a day, usually with some of the members of your congregation. So I ate way too much and not healthy. And so it was a day-to-day thing, but it took a couple months to get back where you could play a full game.
So tell us how you landed at Fresno. This is Jerry Tarkanian's there, right?
No, it was right before him, Gary Colson. So when Jerry Tarkanian took over at Fresno State, I actually transferred to UCSB. So I was there a few months. But anyway, yeah, so the junior college tape that I had was, against good quality competition. And it goes back to Nate, the Bobby Hoffman. He's the one that recruited me. He saw my film. Now, another athletic director at BYU right now is named Brian Santiago. He played at Utah Valley when I was at Rick's. We played each other. So the story goes, and this, I don't know, I think this is pretty accurate. Brian Santiago walked into the office when Bobby Hoffman was watching that film and said, "Listen, do you know this guy? You played against him." And it was me playing Brian and I going against each other. And he goes, "Yeah, you need to recruit him." So Brian helped me get recruited. Then Fresno State reached out to my dad. My dad had sent the video, the highlight film to Fresno State. And if I remember right, my dad's sitting in his office, and Gary Colson, who was the coach at the time, called him, and then the whole recruiting process started. And the day I got off my mission, we drove to Fresno from Anaheim, which is a 3-4 hour drive, and met with them and signed the scholarship papers, which I look back on. I'm like, man, I'm surprised they signed me because I looked out of shape, right? I had the chipmunk cheeks but yeah, that's how it all started.
So I had a follow-up question and then okay, so let's talk about your playing day. No, this was the question. If you're a Wyoming kid, and you were, just a Wyoming kid, because you talked about you like your recruiting process, and there was a little bit of sort of, serendipity, I guess, when with the Brian Santiago connection, and like,
Yeah.
what advice would you give to a Wyoming kid? And you're still very connected to and familiar with the basketball world. How do you get your name out there? How do you get your film out there? What advice would you give to a Wyoming kid who wants to
Yeah.
get recruited?
That's a good question. Well, what you have started with this, where you're going to have a club basketball team that competes at these summer, exposure camps. That's a good start. But the legwork before that, I think, needs to take precedence. Where um, there's you there's don't underestimate the value of sending emails with your highlight film and information to coaches at individual universities. I would recommend doing it to the assistant coaches because the head coaches really don't check their emails, or if they do, they just send it to the assistant coaches. And then the other thing that you know individual colleges, universities have elite camps, high school elite camps, those are great because the coaches are there. Now, they those universities actually, I would say both those things, when I was coaching at UCSB, we found players through both of those avenues. So it's more of a long shot, but it's definitely worth it. Uh, and then because, like when you're recruiting, you don't care where the players come from, but you go to where there's a highest chance of seeing players. So Wyoming just doesn't have a lot of sheer numbers. It's nothing against the players. If you're good enough, you're going to get recruited. So you just have to find ways to get your information and your highlight film in front of college coaches.
Okay. So, let's go back. So you played a year. Did you play at Fresno or did you redshirt that first year?
I played 1 year at Fresno. And I didn't redshirt till I transferred to UCSB.
So was Fresno in the WAC that
That
in that time?
it was the right before the WAC had just disbanded. What was the one right after that?
The Mountain West?
Yeah, Mount West.
I don't think it was. I
Were
can't
they in the
remember off
West
the top of my
Coast
head, but
Conference, maybe?
huh?
West Coast Conference? They slip
No,
into
it wasn't
there?
West Coast. That was shoot, I might have to look it up real quick.
Remember any of the teams you played?
Yeah, we played it was Wyoming, it was BYU, it was Fresno State.
Yeah, so it was probably the
So
WAC.
Yeah,
must have been the
WAC, then
WAC.
I think wasn't the WAC? Because my dad played in the WAC when he played football at Wyoming, and that was in 90 to 93. So
So
around the same time.
must have been the WAC.
But they had like TCU in there, I think, at some point as well.
Uh-huh. Well, no,
I
TCU I
was
think was in
gone
the
by
Mountain West.
then. Yeah.
Then they left. But so Matt, you played a year at Fresno, and then Coach Williams leaves and goes to UCSB. Is that right? And you follow him there?
Yep.
Was that an easy decision to make? Were you like that makes sense?
You broke up. Say it again, Sam.
The decision to leave Fresno and go to UCSB, was that just kind of a no brainer, or were you kind of like, I kind of like Fresno, or what went into that?
Yeah, I really like Fresno. But when Tarkanian came in, he brought a lot of really good players, and we were good with Coach Colson. But he's the one that recruited me. He had invested in me, and so Tarkanian offered me a spot on the team, but said you're probably not going to play much, and rightly so. I mean, they had players, Chris Herron, they had all kinds of good players coming in, and then at the time at Fresno, the athletic director was Gary Cunningham. And when Tarkanian came in, Gary Cunningham left and went to UCSB and then hired Gary Colson, who was my coach at Fresno State, as the assistant athletic director at UCSB. So those two I had relationships with. They introduced me to Coach Pym, who was the coach at UCSB, and they were now the athletic director and the assistant athletic director at UCSB. So it kind of all came together, and I transferred to UCSB because of those relationships.
Okay. And then you redshirted a year there and then played 3?
Yep, played 2. So I
Played 2.
redshirted 1, played 2 for UCSB.
One memory I have of, I remember seeing you play one time on ESPN, and this was in Kim and I, or Nate, Matt, my wife is Kim's brother. That's why he's my third favorite brother-in-law. But
Yeah.
But I don't even know if we were married yet, but I was watching a game, and you were playing at home, and the students started throwing tortillas out onto the floor. That's like a tradition at UCSB?
And back then, yeah, there was every ESPN game, every televised game after the first basket, they would throw tortillas onto the court, and you got an automatic technical. And the problem is they have the flour film on those tortillas, so they would have to pick them all up and then wet mop the floor. So ESPN didn't like it because it took all this time. You had to go to a timeout. So, but it was such a fun tradition. I don't think they do it now. In fact, I know they don't do it. I've been to games, but back then it was the students would definitely sneak those things in and throw them after the first basket.
What started that? Like, did someone just say, you know what, first bucket, we're throwing tortillas on the floor, just because?
I think it started at back when UCSB had football. They did it at football, and they still actually do it at soccer games at UCSB now, right? Where they'll throw, it's not quite as organized. Sometimes just randomly during the game, you'll see a tortilla thrown onto the field, but they're there. But they don't have to pick them up, right? It's different. It's grass. You got cleats. But so I think it started originally with football a long time ago.
Great tradition.
There's a bunch of
Yeah, it's
crazy.
fun.
Matt, did you always know you wanted to coach? So you finished your playing career at UCSB. Was talk about how that coaching transition happened for you.
Yeah. No, I didn't always want to coach. In fact, I don't think I knew what I wanted to do when I graduated. But one of the assistant coaches, because Jerry Pym, who I played for at Santa Barbara, retired the year I graduated. So the new coach came in, Bob Williams from UC Davis, and hired one of the assistant coaches that Jerry Pym had that I was close to. His name was John Wheeler. So John, they were looking for a volunteer assistant. And John went to Coach Williams and said, "Hey, this player who just graduated might be someone that you might be able to convince to do it for no money," right? Because it was, so I did it. The first interview I had with Coach Williams, I knew that, he would be someone that I'd like to work for. And so I just said, "Yeah, whatever you want me to do, I'll do." So I was the volunteer assistant. It happened like maybe a week or two after I actually graduated and was starting to really realize I have to find something to do. And at the beginning, I was thinking, I'll see how this goes, do it a couple years. And if I don't like it, I'll just move on to whatever I want to do next. But one year turned into 19 years with Coach Williams. So it definitely was a good decision.
19 years, getting married, having 3 kids,
Yeah.
living in probably one of the most beautiful towns in the world, Santa Barbara.
Yeah,
Um,
paradise.
yeah. Were you around? You probably how long ago did you leave coaching?
9 years, I think 9 or 10 years now I've been out.
Okay. So you weren't around when they transitioned to the world of NIL and the transfer portal and all that.
No. And while you were frozen, Nathaniel asked me about it. So yeah, I was not. It was still kind of more the traditional college, landscape when I ended coaching.
So
Now, go ahead, Nathaniel.
so how does UCSB deal with the transfer portal? Because like usually like these players that enter the transfer portal, they usually want to go like high Division 1 level, like the Dukes, the ACCs, the SECs, the Big 12. How does UC Santa Barbara, I guess, compete with those players in the transfer portal?
Yeah, good question. No, I'm not on the day-to-day, right, with Coach Pasternak, who's the current coach at UCSB. So it's just me observing, but he does an amazing job of getting players from all over the country and all over the world, and also transfer kids. So we always have kids coming from other universities, and I think he does a good job he's a good fundraiser. So I know he has NIL money that he's able to give these kids. Then they get here, and the same thing that we thought when we were coaching, when you come to UCSB and you see just how you can live and the campus and the lifestyle, it's definitely very attractive. So with that combination of all, you know, in the NIL world, he's done a great job, Coach Pasternak, of getting kids to transfer here that were high majors, and really have an impact here at UCSB.
So UCSB is, I mean, the NIL world is obviously super competitive. You have sort of the haves and the have-nots in some ways, but even like the smaller schools like a UCSB, they have an NIL fund. They have money. And the school can, what did the settlement say? $24 million, something every school can pay students. I can't imagine UCSB is paying out $24 million in NIL money. Maybe they are, but do you feel like you're able to, you're not paying a basketball player, probably 7 figures to come play at UCSB. Maybe you are, I don't know. But do
Yeah,
you
I
feel
don't
like
know the exact figures on it.
but you feel like you guys are able to compete against some of these other schools that maybe have a little bit deeper pockets?
Well, I'm just assuming, by the caliber of players that Coach Pasternak is able to get, that I'm sure they're getting offers from other schools. So I don't know the numbers, but he's definitely in the mix. And I know higher major schools are recruiting some of these kids. So whatever he's doing an amazing job. And financially has got to be competitive because, I can only imagine you're not going to take a huge discount to come here, right? Maybe a little less money to live in the California sun, but not a lot. I'm guessing. I don't know. But whatever he's doing, he's figured out a niche and has done a great job, uh, you know, elevating this program to what they're always really talented and really well coached and have done a good job. Competing in that NIL world. He's done an amazing job transitioning quickly and pivoting quickly. So it's been fun to watch for the last couple of years.
What do you think is the future of NIL? Do you think it'll continue down this trajectory where, agents are demanding big time contracts? Do you think there'll be some sort of plateauing or some walking back of this big time money that's flowing into college basketball, well, college sports, large, uh, all of it?
It's a good question. And this is, I don't have any information or any inside information, but just my experience with stuff like this is probably before NIL, the pendulum was too far where the players didn't get anything, right? And now it seems like maybe the pendulum swung too far the other way. And then eventually there's a balance and it'll swing kind of back into the middle. I don't know what that'll look like. I don't know what that means, but it just seems like that it's so, kind of new and a lot of times just crazy money out there that it seems like it's got to level out at some point. So, and I'm sure the coaches probably want that where it's just crazy right now.
So UCSB, I don't know, what conference are you guys in right now?
Right now we're in the Big West,
Big West?
and not next year, the year after, we're going to the West Coast.
Okay, so let's just say right now you're in the West Coast. So kind of what I picture NIL and the transfer portal, I've been in the transfer portal. It seems to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, these high school kids are these really good high school kids go to Division 1, like a mid major or lower major, but then after one good year, they use that as a leap pad to a high major. So does UCSB, can you guys like get a player and keep a player? Do you guys even look at high school players before or do you guys even recruit high school players, or do high school players mainly, if they can't get that recruitment because of the transfer portal, they go to junior college and then try and get out and go somewhere? So I guess do you guys look at junior colleges mainly, the transfer portal, or high schools particularly?
It's a good question. And I'm only speaking to now from just talking to some of my friends that are still in coaching that the high school students or high school players are the ones that get overlooked now because, why would you take a high school kid, try and develop them so that they leave a year later, right? So that's the hard part. But, you know, uh, especially if you're not, one of the top players in the country where you're just trying to find a good place, a good fit. So I think now the high school athlete might be a little under recruited. But and I think the schools are looking to use the portal to fill out their team every year. So the high school athlete still has a place. It's just not as prevalent as it used to be.
So then what would your advice be if you're a high school player right now and you
Yep.
know that these guys, the colleges are looking at the transfer portal? What is your advice to them recruiting wise? They have a D2 offer, or do they try and go JUCO or D3 NIA? I guess what's the route that a good high school player that's not particularly getting looked at a high major Division 1? I guess what's the
Yeah.
recommendation for them?
I think that's a good question. So you got to go somewhere where you're going to play, where you have you feel like, so whatever level that is, where you're going to get game experience to develop. And then, like you say, you can get to the portal and move up that way. You hear a lot of these division 2 kids that then get to the portal and they go to Division 1 programs, their junior, senior years. And it's because if they would have went to a Division 1 program and sat, that would have never happened, right? They'd have one chance. They'd stay there and try and develop and be at that university, which there's nothing wrong with that either. But there's definitely, Division 2, Division 3, if you're in a good situation and you're able to play and develop your game. And a lot of the coaches don't like to be young, right? They like to have older players in the program because you just have an innate advantage. So if you're a freshman, sophomore, you're able to play and develop your game, and now you're 20, 21, and you've proven yourself at those levels, those coaches are like, yeah, let's take this kid. He's older, he's stronger, he's been around the game a few years. We can win with that type of player. So that's definitely an advantage.
Okay, Matt, we're running short of time, but I have a couple questions I want to ask you, and then we have two final questions we ask everybody.
Yeah.
But talked about what you're doing now within the foundation there, and what that work looks like.
Yeah. So I work in the alumni affairs department, and I engage with as many UCSB alumni as possible. And I raise money for the university and specifically for, for the alumni affairs department. So it's a frontline fundraiser position that you just to get to engage with. We have over 250,000 alumni now. So you're just always trying to get in front of alumni, figure out what their experience was at UCSB and how they can have an impact by donating money back to UCSB.
You like it? It seems like a pretty cool job,
Yeah.
whining and dining
Yeah.
and schmoozing with all these, highfalutin UCSB grads.
Well, the thing for me is I've been at UCSB, as a student, a player now for over 25 years, close to 30 years. So I love UCSB. My wife's from Santa Barbara. My kids have grown up here. So, I can speak passionately about UCSB and it's been my life. So it's definitely fun to be out there and telling others, hey, you graduate, you haven't been engaged with the university in a while. Let's find a way to get you back, in the fold. So it's definitely a fun job.
The last question, then we have a couple of final questions. You're one of three boys. Your other brothers were athletes in their own right. Ben went and played soccer, college soccer. Daniel, your younger brother, played college basketball as well. What was you're the oldest, and you're quite a few years. What do you quite a few years older? But were
Yeah,
you guys
because you're
competing
yeah.
against each other? What did that look like growing up with the three brothers that were all pretty competitive athletes?
Yeah, both my brothers are really good athletes, and so you'd have to ask them, but most of the time, I remember whatever game we played that it ended bad. There was someone crying, someone upset, and most of the time it was because of my poor sportsmanship. But, if somehow they would beat me, we would never stop the game until I was back on top because I've never wanted them to have, to tell them they could beat their older brother. But I'm sure they did because they were good athletes. But yeah, I would say most to blame looking back on it was all the issues my parents had to step in were because of me.
Yeah.
Anyone
As
watching this?
Nathaniel's an older
um,
brother, I'm the oldest of six boys, and so that we were nodding our heads along with you,
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's how it's
I
supposed to
was
work.
anyone watching this later is definitely laughing if they have a sibling because they know exactly that feeling. And if anyone says they don't, they're lying.
Yeah.
So, Nathaniel, will you ask the last two questions that we ask everybody?
Yeah. So overall, as a player playing a sport or watching a sport, what was your favorite all-time sports memory?
That I was involved in or just watching or
Involved, watched, kind of just whatever sports.
okay. Um, I would say in the coaching side of things, we went to the NCAA tournament 3 times, so that experience was fun. Um, and then in high school, just my senior year was well, my overall high school was fun because we had 5 state titles that we won, but my senior year we only lost one game in football, basketball, and soccer, and that was the state championship for football. So that ride, you know, was fun that year. I think 44-1 or something if you combined all the sports. So that was definitely a fun memory and one that, when I see my old teammates, it's always fun to reminisce. And again, we were a lot better now than we were back then if you listen to the stories. So
Well,
it,
by
it
the way,
was
Matt's still making a case for the class of '91 being the best sports class in the
yeah,
history of Central.
Nathaniel, there you go.
I will say this, John Godina, how do you say John's last name?
Yeah, Gadina.
Yep.
Godina, he was in your class, right?
Yeah, he was a year older, but
Okay.
he was, on the offensive line as a quarterback, and there were games when and we had other really good linemen, like, my junior year, I'd go through a whole game and not get touched as a quarterback, and the joke was they didn't even have to wash my uniform. So, yeah, now that I've embellished enough today, you guys can go figure out what's true and what's not.
I I've tracked some of this stuff, and there are only about 2 or 3 just, bald-faced lies, Matt, so we'll call you out
Okay,
on it.
good.
No. So the last question is, thinking about your experience as a leader, as a coach, as, a mentor, who was somebody, either who was a great leader or mentor that you remember, or gave you some really great leadership advice, and what was that?
Okay, so Coach Williams, who I mentioned earlier, I worked for 19 years, I consider him my mentor, and I still talk to him regularly. He always, by the time, he was older, his last 10 years we were together, he was a little bit on the experienced side as a coach, and so we always had great wisdom. But I I I talked about earlier where my first meeting with him when I was just graduated, one of the good good advice he gave me was, "Listen, I know you just graduated, but go take care of your retirement. Get a 401k, I can still remember financial advice from him the first time I met him, which I've always appreciated. And he said, "You'll thank me for this 30 years later." And he's true. It's true. It's almost 30 years later, and I thank him for that advice all the time. And then his advice and his philosophy that he was always so open-minded to other he's like, "Hey, go find people that are successful. It doesn't matter the profession. See what they're doing, bring it back to our staff, and let's incorporate some of that into our program." So we would steal stuff from football programs. We'd go talk to successful business leaders and see what they're doing to make themselves successful and incorporate that into our program. In fact, we'd even steal stuff from our opponents because if you're having success with it, there's a reason. And so that's something that's always stuck with me, that trying to learn from everybody and then just incorporate it into whatever you're doing that could fit into your program.
Great. Well, Matt, hey, again, huge thank you for your time. Nathaniel, any last questions before we let Matt go?
I don't have any, no, I think this was great. A lot of good advice, information, and good story. Great story.
Yeah, this is fun. Nathaniel, and I just wanted to give you props for putting up with Sam. So thanks for dealing with him on a day-to-day basis. That's definitely whatever your salary is, Sam needs to
We'll
increase
double
it,
it,
or you need
Nathaniel.
to take a bump in pay. So
Well, Matt, hey, thanks so much for joining us. This was a lot of fun, and we'll sign off now and see everybody next time.
sounds good. See you guys.